7 years have passed, but he never aged, never changed. He was exactly as he was the first day he arrived. But we didn't realize. We didn't bring home a child. We brought something else. If you think nightmares come when you sleep, you're wrong. Welcome to Midnight Terrors, where horror begins the moment you wake up. My name is Ethan Wilson, and I swear, I never expected my life to change like this. Looking back, maybe there were signs. Tiny cracks in reality I ignored, whispers in the silence I brushed aside. But at the time, I thought we were just helping a child in need. It all started when my mother decided to adopt a boy from an orphanage on the outskirts of town. Not the type with bright walls and cheerful staff. No, this place was something else, entirely. A forgotten institution, hidden behind rusted gates, where time had settled like dust on its neglected corridors. The air was thick with dampness, the ceiling lights flickering weakly, as if struggling to hold on to their last breath of existence. I remember walking through the orphanage's hallway, my sneakers scuffing against the cracked tiles. My mother held my sister's hand tightly, and my father stayed close behind. There was something unsettling about the way the children sat. Silent, unmoving, staring at us like visitors from another world. Then I saw him. In the dim corner of a poorly lit room, a small boy sat alone. He was younger than the others, but there was something unnatural about the way he carried himself. Too still, too quiet. His hands rested on his lap, fingers pale and slender. His name, according to the frail woman running the orphanage, was Adam. "He's been here a long time," she murmured, avoiding eye contact. Adam didn't speak. He didn't cry, didn't fidget the way most kids do when strangers walk in. He just sat there, staring at nothing, his dark eyes empty, like they held something deeper than just childhood innocence. More like a window into a place I didn't want to see. Still, my mother knelt beside him, whispering in that comforting tone she always used, promising him a new home, a new family. I wanted to say something, wanted to ask why he wasn't reacting like the other kids, but I didn't. We took him home. From the moment he stepped inside our house, everything felt off. The air seemed heavier, the lights dimmer, as if the house itself sensed something was wrong. Adam never complained, never asked for anything, never cried at night like most children adjusting to a new home. He was always watching, sitting in corners, eyes trailing movements, as though he wasn't quite learning about us, but studying us. I felt it then, that gnawing sensation deep in my gut. Something was not right, but I didn't speak up. If I had, maybe everything would have been different. 7 years passed, 7 long years where the world changed. Seasons came and went. I grew older. My sister started high school. My parents gained and lost friends. But Adam stayed the same. At first, it wasn't alarming. He was just a late bloomer, my mother told herself. Some kids take longer to grow, to change. She clung to that belief, brushing away doubts whenever his birthday came and went, with no difference in his appearance, no shift in his voice, no new habits or emotions. But I knew. Deep down, I knew something was off. At 12, Adam looked exactly the same as he had when he was 5. His cheeks never lost their roundness. His limbs never stretched like mine had. His clothes needed replacing only because they wore out, not because he outgrew them. Then there were the records. One day, my mother dug out the adoption papers, searching for more details, hoping to understand if there was something medically wrong with Adam. She spent hours flipping through every page, every document from the orphanage. But the dates didn't make sense. The paperwork showed conflicting timelines, documents from decades apart referring to the same child. The record stated Adam had been admitted into the orphanage 20 years ago, but that was impossible. The woman who signed those papers had retired over a decade before we adopted him. His medical file was thin, barely a few handwritten notes. No vaccinations, no growth charts, no birth certificate. Just one line scribbled hastily at the bottom of a page. Child does not age. No response to treatment. No further studies required. That was when my mother began to panic. She booked a doctor's appointment, taking Adam in for tests. Blood work, scans, genetic analysis, everything she could arrange. But the results were disturbing. Medically, he is normal, the doctor told us. But developmentally, this defies logic. His cells should be aging, yet they aren't showing signs of time passing. A specialist was brought in, then another, until finally they all reached the same conclusion. There's nothing wrong with him, but there's also no scientific explanation for his condition. No one knew why he hadn't aged, but I had a feeling Adam already knew. He sat there, watching, unmoved by the panic, the tests, the questions. His expression never changed, just those blank eyes scanning the room, absorbing everything, yet revealing nothing. And then one night, the whispers began. It started with a feeling, a weight in the air, thick and suffocating, pressing down on my chest whenever I walked past Adam's room at night. At first, I ignored it, chalked it up to my imagination, to the eerie silence that always settled over our house after midnight. But then the whispers began. At first, they were faint, too soft to make out, like distant murmurs carried through the walls. I assumed it was the wind, the old pipes creaking, maybe even my parents talking downstairs. But the more I listened, the more I realized it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from Adam's room. One night, I woke up gasping for air, my heart racing for no reason. The house was still, silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. But beneath that quiet, something else stirred. Whispers, soft, rhythmic, like a conversation happening in another dimension. I sat up slowly, listening, barely daring to breathe. The voices were hushed, but urgent, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Not English, not anything I had ever heard before. It was unsettling, not just because of the words, but because Adam was alone in that room. I swallowed my fear and forced myself out of bed. The hallway stretched before me, dimly lit by the sliver of moonlight sneaking through the curtains. I walked toward Adam's door, each step heavy, each breath shallow. The whispers grew louder, filling the space between me and whatever waited on the other side. I placed my hand on the doorknob, hesitating. Then, silence. The voices stopped. The air felt wrong, thick, electric, like something had just vanished the moment I reached the door. I held my breath, waiting, straining to hear even the faintest sound. Then, a soft creak. The door opened an inch on its own. My pulse slammed against my ribs. I stepped back, instinct screaming at me to run. But something compelled me to look, to just peek inside. I pushed the door open a little more. Adam sat on his bed, staring directly at me. He wasn't blinking. His face was blank, expressionless, as if he had been sitting in the dark, waiting for me this whole time. And his lips, they were moving, ever so slightly. No sound came out, but I knew. He had been the one whispering. Or worse, he hadn't been alone. I wish I could tell you that the whispers were the worst part, that the unsettling feeling of hearing Adam speak in a voice that didn't belong to him was the peak of the horror. But things only got worse. It started subtly. Small things. Things that could be explained away if you weren't looking too closely. Shadows stretching in ways they shouldn't, flickering against the walls as if they had a life of their own. At first, my father dismissed it as a trick of the light, a strange optical illusion caused by the old bulbs in our home. But I saw it, really saw it. The shadows moved when Adam did. Not like normal shadows, cast by the direction of the light. No, these were different. They followed him, reacted to him, sometimes even lingered behind when he walked away. One night, I was sitting on the couch in the living room, watching TV while Adam sat nearby, his usual silent presence filling the space like an unseen weight. My father entered the room, standing near Adam for a moment, as he spoke about some mundane thing, something normal, something that had no place in the growing darkness surrounding us. And then it happened. His shadow, his own familiar, perfectly reasonable shadow, changed. It stretched unnaturally tall behind him, bending at the edges in ways that made no sense. And worse, there was another shadow beside it. A second shape, thin and elongated, standing just behind my father, unmoving. I gasped, jerking forward, my heart hammering so loudly I could barely hear myself speak. "Dad, behind you!" He turned, frowning, expecting to find something, someone. But there was nothing. Only Adam, sitting in his chair, his dark eyes locked onto me. I could still see the shadow just for a moment longer, lingering on the wall as if it had nowhere else to go. And then, with a flicker of the lamp, it was gone. I should have screamed then. Should have told my father everything. About the whispers, the unnatural stillness, the way time didn't seem to touch Adam like it touched the rest of us. But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed my fear, forced a smile, and pretended I hadn't seen anything at all. Because deep down, I knew Adam was watching, and worse, whatever stood in the shadows was watching too. By now, the strangeness surrounding Adam had settled into the house like a thick fog, always there, lingering in the background, creeping into the corners of our minds, even when we tried to ignore it. My parents still clung to rational explanations, brushing aside the inconsistencies, convincing themselves that everything was fine. But my sister knew. She was only 10 at the time, and maybe that made her more perceptive. Maybe children just see things that adults condition themselves to ignore. It started with her dolls. She had a collection, porcelain ones with glassy eyes, stuffed ones with ragged stitching, plastic ones with perfect painted smiles. They sat neatly on the shelves in her bedroom, untouched most of the time, until she noticed they had started to move. "Ethan," she whispered to me one evening, standing at my doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. "Something's wrong with my toys." "What do you mean?" I asked, glancing up from my phone. Her voice was hushed, hesitant. "They're not where I leave them. I woke up last night, and they weren't in their spots." I frowned. "Maybe you just forgot where you put them." She shook her head violently. They were different. Their faces." She hesitated, shivering. "They looked wrong." That was the first time I checked her room. Everything seemed normal at first. The dolls were lined up on their shelves, positioned just as they had always been. But there was something off about them, something I couldn't put my finger on. Their eyes seemed too focused, their heads angled in a way that looked unnatural, almost intentional. And then Adam walked in. He stood at the doorway watching, his gaze sweeping over the dolls, then settling on my sister. "They're listening," he said quietly. I stared at him, my chest tightening. "What? They know what you're afraid of." His voice was flat, no malice, no amusement, just a statement. My sister bolted out of the room, racing down the hall without another word. That night, she screamed. I rushed in to find her standing in the middle of her room, breathless, shaking, her rabbit hanging upside down from her ceiling fan. "I didn't do that," she sobbed, pointing at the dangling stuffed toy. I turned to Adam. He sat on the floor, legs crossed, eyes locked onto the rabbit. His expression was unreadable, his lips moving ever so slightly. He was whispering. And the other dolls? They weren't where they had been earlier. They were lined up on her bed, all facing the door, waiting, watching. By now, fear was an unspoken presence in our home, woven into every breath, lingering in every shadow. My parents still refused to acknowledge the truth, clinging to rational explanations like lifeboats in a sinking sea. But my sister barely slept, and I had started watching Adam the way he watched us. Then, my father found the book. It was buried deep inside Adam's closet, behind stacks of untouched toys and clothes he never outgrew. A small, leather-bound book, worn at the edges, its pages yellowed with time. "What's this?" my father muttered, pulling it out and brushing off the dust. Adam, sitting on his bed, did not react. I stood behind my father, watching as he flipped through the first few pages. The handwriting was erratic, uneven, ink smudged in places where the writer had pressed too hard. It wasn't in English. Not in any language I recognized. Symbols, jagged letters, markings that felt wrong, as if they weren't meant to be read, but rather understood in some darker way. My father shook his head, flipping faster, frustration building. Then his fingers froze. There, amidst the chaos of foreign writing, was something unmistakable. Names. Our names. Ethan Wilson. Margaret Wilson. Michael Wilson. Lucy Wilson. And next to each name, a date. Some dates had already passed. Some were in the future. And next to each one, in the same strange handwriting, was a single word. Disappearance. My father turned pale, his grip tightening on the book. He flipped frantically, searching for explanations, but there were none. Then, a sound. A faint, rhythmic tapping. I turned my head slowly toward Adam, my pulse hammering. He was sitting cross-legged on the bed, his finger softly drumming against the blanket. His dark eyes locked on the book, but his face was unreadable. No surprise, no fear, no curiosity, just waiting. "What is this?" my father demanded, voice sharp with panic. "Where did you get this?" Adam blinked once, and then, softly, almost gently, he spoke. "I didn't write it." My stomach turned. "Who did?" my father asked, but Adam didn't respond. Instead, he just smiled. And for the first time in years, I realized how unnatural that smile truly was. Mirrors have always unsettled me. Something about their silent reflections, the way they mimic every movement, yet always seem just slightly off. As if what looks back at you isn't truly you, but something else entirely. And after what happened with Adam, I will never look at a mirror the same way again. It started with my mother. She was the first to notice that something wasn't quite right. It was a small detail at first, something anyone could overlook if they weren't paying attention. Adam's reflection didn't always match his movements. She saw it one evening in the hallway mirror, just for a brief second. She was fixing her hair, idly glancing at the reflection behind her. Adam was sitting at the table, playing with a wooden puzzle, shifting pieces back and forth. She turned to call him, but when she looked back into the mirror, his hands weren't moving. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but once she saw it, she couldn't unsee it. Over the next few days, she watched him carefully, testing the mirror whenever she could. She'd make small talk, pretending to fix something near the glass, her eyes stealing glances. And every time, his reflection would lag behind, ever so slightly, like a bad video glitch, like something struggling to keep up with the real world. Then one morning, she screamed. I ran downstairs, my heart slamming in my chest, expecting the worst. She was standing frozen in front of the bathroom mirror, her hands gripping the sink so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "Ethan," she whispered, not turning to face me. "Look." I hesitated, then stepped closer, following her gaze into the mirror. At first, everything seemed normal. Our reflections stood there, exactly as they should. But then I saw Adam. He stood at the end of the hallway, watching us. But his reflection wasn't facing forward. It was turned toward us, staring directly at us, even though in real life he was looking somewhere else. Cold dread sank into my bones. "Mum, don't move," I whispered. Adam hadn't noticed yet. Or maybe he had. Maybe he had been waiting for us to finally see what had always been wrong. Then, something shifted. A blink. A tiny movement in the reflection. Not Adam, but the thing behind him. A tall, dark figure loomed in the mirror, standing right behind his reflection. No features. No face. Just a towering shadow, stretching impossibly thin, bending toward him like it was whispering something into his ear. I turned, ready to grab Adam, ready to pull him away from whatever nightmare had just become real. But when I looked into the hallway, there was nothing there. Adam was standing alone, exactly where his reflection showed. But there was no one behind him in real life, only in the mirror, watching, waiting, smiling. It happened overnight. My grandfather had been sitting in his usual chair the evening before, sipping tea, humming softly as he read his old newspaper. He was always an early riser, up at dawn, wandering into the kitchen before any of us had even stirred. But that morning, he was gone. His bedroom door was open, the sheets still tucked into the bed as if he had never laid down. His slippers were still by the door, his mug still sitting half full on the counter. But he wasn't there. At first, my parents thought he had gone for a walk. They checked the backyard, the street, even called the neighbors. Nothing. I tried to tell them, tried to force the words past my lips, but fear choked me. Because the night before, I had heard something. I had heard him talking to Adam. I had been walking to the bathroom when I spotted my grandfather standing in the hallway, his back to me, staring into Adam's room. The door had been cracked open, just enough for me to see the edge of Adam's bed, see him sitting perfectly still, watching my grandfather in the dark. "What are you?" my grandfather whispered. Adam didn't answer, just smiled. And now, my grandfather was gone. No goodbye, no trail, no explanation. Only his chair, forever empty. And Adam, sitting in his room, watching it, like he was waiting for the next one. My father was the one who decided to dig into Adam's past. Something had snapped inside him after my grandfather's disappearance. Something deep, something raw. He was done pretending. Done ignoring the reality clawing its way through our lives. He drove back to the orphanage, demanding records, answers. But there was nothing left. The orphanage had burned down years ago. The fire destroyed everything, the woman at the records office told him. Most of the old files are gone. But my father wouldn't leave empty-handed. He combed through dusty cabinets, flipped through faded papers, until finally, he found it. An old photograph. A faded, yellowed picture of a boy sitting at the orphanage's steps, staring blankly at the camera. Adam. And beneath the photograph, a date. 1968. The truth was clear now. Adam wasn't a child. Or rather, he was, but he was stuck, frozen in time. Or maybe he wasn't frozen at all. Maybe he was feeding, absorbing something from the people around him, pulling them into whatever space he existed in, where time stood still and the world moved without him. My mother refused to believe it. "This is ridiculous," she sobbed. "He's just a boy." But my father wasn't convinced. "He's not aging, Margaret," he snapped. "You saw the records." Adam sat in the corner, silent, staring at us through the argument, through the fear. And for the first time, I wondered, what did Adam see when he looked at us? We tried to leave. We packed our bags, stuffed clothes into suitcases, grabbed my sister's dolls, my father's watch, my mother's wedding ring. We piled into the car, slamming doors, locking the house behind us. We drove. Faster than we ever had before, barreling down the highway, putting mile after mile between us and Adam. But when the headlights flickered, when the GPS stuttered, when the world shifted, I knew. We weren't going anywhere. The road bent impossibly, looping back, dragging us toward home no matter how far we drove. My father gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. "This isn't real," he muttered. But the house was waiting for us, and Adam was sitting on the porch, smiling. We never stood a chance. My family disappeared, one by one. My father first, then my mother, then Lucy. I don't remember how. I only remember waking up alone. The house was silent. The walls breathed. The shadows crept. And Adam sat across from me, legs crossed, hands folded, his dark eyes locked onto mine. "Do you see now?" he whispered. And I did. Because when I looked into the mirror, I saw a boy who would never grow old, a boy who had taken my place. And outside, a car pulled up, a new family, a new beginning, a new victim.